Welcome to the Hyper Guy Motivational Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. I've been asking this wonderful gentleman to be on my podcast for probably like a half a year now, and I'm so
Hmm.
happy to be here. So happy that he's here today. So thank you so much for being here, Willie. And it's Mr. Willie Jenkins. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Fig. I really appreciate this.
No, no, don't thank me. I'm thanking you for being on it. So, Willie and I met, and Willie's got an amazing story. He is a very successful businessman and entrepreneur. He's been in contracting for many years, and then he opened up a couple very successful sandwich shops and restaurants that are very, very popular. One in Inglewood, and one at USC, and that's how him and I met. But I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm going to talk about your other stuff too. You're a wonderful dad. We got that down. You got
Thank
three amazing children, and you're also an avid runner, a marathoner, and a snowboarder, which I didn't know. Which I you're a big snowboarder too, and you're a community activist. You always get back to the community, and I want to pick your brain on leadership stuff and how you stay motivated and all the wonderful success stories that you had in your life. So, where were you born and raised, Willie?
I was born and raised in the Los Angeles area, primarily in Carson, California. I went to elementary school, junior high school, and Carson High School, home of the Colts, in the South Bay of Los Angeles area.
And what was growing up for you like in LA?
It was very interesting. I grew up in LA. I came to like we called it junior high school back then, but they call it middle school. I was in junior high school right at the beginning of the whole gangs and drug scene, because you had the 80s, the whole drug epidemic that was going on in the Los Angeles area, well, going on everywhere. But from my lens, was growing up in LA. And then it was also appeared for us it seemed like the gang culture had become real big when I was growing up and going to school in the early 90s.
Do you have any brothers and sisters growing up?
Yeah, I come from a big family. I'm right there in the middle. I have four siblings above me and four below me. I have two brothers, one younger, one older, and I have six sisters.
Oh my God, you got a huge family. And
Yes.
what was it like growing up with so many kids in your family?
It was for me being a middle kid, smack dab in the middle. It was a good thing because I got to learn from my older siblings, good, bad, or indifferent. I used to hear their stories, so I kind of knew what to look out for around the corner before I got there, and then also it put me in a position because you kind of have a hierarchy when you have a family that big, so I knew that my role was to always be a protector, a provider. It was just embedded in me that it's something I carry to this day. It's Ubuntu. It means that I am because we are. So I grew up with that mindset.
And what was your relationship like with your parents growing up?
Um, it was a beautiful thing where my parents, they came from humble beginnings. My father was a general contractor. That's where I learned construction from. The name of my company, I named it after my father's company, rest in peace. He was a hardworking man, a religious man. My mother, very religious, so I grew up in the church. I grew up understanding the value of family. And then also, both my parents are from the South, Mississippi and Louisiana. So I'm a product of Los Angeles, but I have Southern roots, so always was taught to be a man amongst men, certain little things that my father taught me, and one of the best things that my father taught me, he had shortcomings because he was an addict, but he was present, he struggled, his childhood was tumultuous. So, but he would say things like, don't be like me, be better than me. He would always try to groom us to be prepared for a world that he wasn't able to conquer in certain areas, but the areas that he was able to conquer, he shared that with us. And then I like to mix that with my mom's spirituality, always believe in God, trust in God, keep on fighting, keep on being yourself, So I think I had a nice little mixture, like a gumbo, like both sides, the business side comes from my father. My father, he owned 6 houses at one point. He actually gave me the vision for the restaurant. He taught me as a kid, standing in line at a fast food restaurant, working construction. He said, construction is feast or famine, but everybody got to eat. So that was the seed that was planted as I was probably like 14. So I get that to my parents. They always taught me to dream and to execute.
And what kind of hobbies do you have growing up? Did you guys did you guys play? You have a big, your family is like almost like the size of a team. Uh, what kind of hobbies did you have growing up?
Growing up, our house was the cool house because we had like the Atari. I think the entrepreneurship grew from that. We had the basketball, we had the ping pong table, we had all the bikes. So we were the hangout house growing up. I had a very good childhood. For the most part, and hobby wise, it was typically like with a family that big, is like what can we do that was free. So it'd be concerts in the park. It'd be we would go to Beverly Hills. My father would get us loaded up in a van, and he'd go because he had contracts as a contractor in like very well off neighborhoods. So he planted the seed. He'll take us to Beverly Hills and be like, that's where Lionel Richie lives, and point out these facts that he learned in his walks. And as a kid, you watching this like, wow, like we just literally left Carson 30 minutes ago, and there's people living like that here. So I think that was the genius of my father. He knew to plant those seeds.
What? Well, I'm going to ask you this later on, but it just made me think of this. Um, was your dad alive when you opened up your sandwich shops, your first one?
No. My father, at the point that I started the first one 11 years ago, my father would have had been deceased about 16 years ago. My father passed away at the age of 47, very young, of a heart attack. And but I was probably about 21 when my father passed. And but it taught me to always kind of carry on the legacy. That was one of the things he envisioned. But no, unfortunately, my father, he didn't get to see the opening of our shop. But
What about your mom?
my mom did. Yeah, my mom, she was at the grand opening. My mom was there for our soft opening. So it's amazing to see my mom see something that her husband envisioned, and to see it to manifest. I think that was a beautiful thing for me to see my mom get to see it.
When you finished up, so you had a very good relationship with your brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Did you have an idea that you said you knew you kind of had a construction background? Did you know you were going to go into construction? So when you finished high school, what kind of brought you down the path of entrepreneurship?
I actually ran away from construction, but I was good at it. So after my father passed, he was actually working on a project, and my little brother and myself, we went and finished the project. So it was like a nice little book ending for me. I was like, you know what, as a kid, you kind of had to do it. It was the weekends, summers, I didn't take it for granted because I think it kept me out of trouble. But it was always, it's hard work, so I wanted to work with a nice suit and work in the office. So I went to school for HVAC, thermodynamics, to work in the field of HVAC. Like my brother, he was making good money. So, but I had a son on the way. I was supposed to be a correctional officer, but I got in a little bit of trouble when I was 19 for something I didn't even do. And long story short, I was waiting for my background check to come through. And so I finished school. I got a job in facility maintenance. And so when the background check came through, I was supposed to go to the academy. I was like, well, I don't really know if I want to go that route when I'm already making good money. So I decided to stay in facility management. And that opened up the doors for me to still utilize my construction background, because in facilities management, you have to know contract, you have to manage contractors, you have to understand how to deal with maintenance, you have to understand how to budget, come off and control your budget. And then I got to the point where I had multiple sites in multiple cities and different states, and then I was also a junior executive at one point, and that's all without, a college degree. I was still going to school at that point, but just working hard from what I learned from my father, working the family business. So I always say, you can't outwork me,
And well, that's what I really like, because there's so many people that you don't necessarily need to have a college education,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the grit and your motivation and your persistence
Mm-hmm.
that has made you so successful today, and your intelligence, just learning how to work. I mean, you started a business from scratch.
Yes,
And
sir.
learning all those things. It's those are dynamic challenges, and you took those things on. When did you start your construction business, and then what kind of construction business did you have?
So I started my construction business in 2003. I was still working for a company called 3D Systems. I was back and forth between, what do I want to do with my life? I enjoy what I do in corporate America, but it was always that itch that, I think that seed that my father planted. So I think I started my construction business because being a family man, I was married with 3 kids. And so my ex-wife, she was in school. She was in college to become a nurse. So I was like, I don't want to take away money from the household. So I started doing construction on the side, and one project turned to a next one. And I met a gentleman who owned some apartments that I was doing work for. And he was like, I'll sign you off on your general contractor's license. So I became a GC, and I worked through probably like 2 years with my new license, and took on certain projects to kind of get a feel to see what type of construction I wanted to be in. And so I worked from commercial to residential to industrial. We even did utility companies. I worked with the gas company. I've actually did federal contracts. So in the construction side, I've gone further than what my father went, but it was one of those things that I had a head start from all the stuff that he taught me. So also have a C13, which is fencing as well. So black walls, chain link, wood, we did it all, but our specialty was what you call tenant improvements, which is you have a space like my restaurant, for instance. When you have a theme that you want to build out, we come in and take on whatever the plans say and build it to the specs of what the customer envisions. So on the commercial side, we've done the Puma stores, I've done salons, I've done barbershops, dental offices. So that was our forte for many years.
So I got to ask you this. This is people are going to say, what did you like doing the most when you were a general contractor, and what did you like doing the least?
I love the creative. Even when I was a kid, growing up in Carson, some of the houses were, probably 20, 30 years old. And so at that point, stuff starts deteriorating, And so I just love to say that I was a part of a product that was a little bit beat up, but had good bones, and to take it from that and then to bring it into the current state of beauty and where the customer appreciates it. And I like the fact that I had a part to do with that. The part that I didn't like, but it's weird because I know it's a process. It was a part of the process. So it was sometimes the customer is not always right, you know. And to go in a city like Los Angeles, you have so many different backgrounds, different ethnicities. So it was challenging, but it taught me how to understand different cultures and how to always closing. You know, my salesmanship picked up as a result of working in construction.
So now we get to go into this. Let me ask you quick. I kind of digress sometimes because sometimes I have some questions in my head as a general contractor. Is there any advice that you would give people when they're looking for a good general contractor?
The best advice is to compare apples to apples. Always get 3 bids. That kind of sets the tone to understand what's at stake, you know, what you're up against or what you're facing as far as a consumer when you're dealing with the contractor. So now you can kind of see that this value that these 3 guys who came out or girls who came out, they gave you their numbers, but then you could start looking at the different things that they're saying that they're going to do for that amount. So you should have a pretty good ballpark. But then the last thing is once you kind of, you know, break down whatever your bottom line is, whether it's cost, professionalism, however you interacted, to be able to differentiate each contractor references. You know, you want to, it's a lot of guys out there who make my job harder, you know, because I've always played it the right way. And I've always been the honest guy, you know, and so I've always educated my customers, even if they don't choose me, this is what to look out for. So I even want to add that to it. You know, I think people want to do business with people who they like, you know, so have that gut, you know, instinct about it. You know, it's definitely a lot of money that people go into, you know, putting into their houses or their projects. So you want to make sure that you do your due diligence, you know.
What advice would you give somebody if they wanted to be a contractor? And we're going to start getting off into the sandwiches, but
Yeah.
these are some questions that I've always had and other people have asked me.
I would say that you want to make sure that you are in the right field, you know, because it could be a challenge because there's so many different areas that you could go into the construction world, you know. So make sure you're proficient in whatever trade that you do choose. But then even with that trade, I would tell you to just go out there and try different things and then work with the one that you are the best at, you know. Um, and, you know, kind of be like a one trick pony, I think, you know, because if you perfect that, there's always going to be a demand, but also I understand what that demand is, you know, so don't just be the best at something that's not a demand, but understand what's at stake with whatever trade you choose, you know. So it's supply and demand, like business 101.
When you were starting your construction business, what was the biggest obstacle for you?
Um, the biggest obstacle when we were first starting, it probably was time, you know, balancing because I was still working a 9 to 5 and I had a family and 3 sons, you know, they were in music, they were in basketball, they were in karate. So it was just a juggling act. So it was work-life balance was the biggest challenge for me. I was just fortunate, I think, because I was able to um, meet the right people at the right time, and that was just basically being active and working the process. But the biggest thing is I also learned too another little tidbit. I learned this from one of my mentors a guy named Eric. He was one of my mentors, and he was a flooring guy. But he taught me that you want to interview your clients just like your clients are interviewing you. So it might not just be a good fit. You know, it might be something that I could be of service by educating the client, but we just don't, we're not a good fit. So the challenges that I had to learn, because I think that it's a learning curve in that, you know, you have to develop that, I think, you know.
And so out of this business, you became a very, very accomplished general contractor, and that grew into your sandwich, your restaurants. When did that start? When did you decide, you know what, I'm going to do it? And then when did you actually go for it, and what made you do that?
So the backstory was my father taught me about the feast or famine thing, and that's when the seed was planted. But I would say it took at least 20 years for me to actually execute. And I was in Oakland, and I had went around, I was eating all the good food and went to some cool delis up there. And I was kind of going through burnout on the construction thing. I'm still passionate about it, but I'm like, you know what? Let me see if I can, leverage some of this money I have and into an investment. So I was thinking, let me try this. So I already had certain things established on the personal level, but I wanted to do a restaurant because that's what my father had told me about. So long story short, I I started looking at different locations once I landed in LX, back in LA from LAX. So I went to about 3 locations, and when I found the location in Inglewood, I just knew that was it. And I knew that I wanted to do like a deli because I'm not really a chef, I don't really cook, but I made lots of sandwiches for my boys. They grew up always on the run. So we always made a sandwich. So let's go, everybody in the truck. So we go on to whatever mission we had to accomplish that day. So, but then even with that, I found a location, and then life hits you. My mom had 2 strokes. My sister got diagnosed with lupus. I had a hernia. So I'm just like, all these health issues. I'm just like, but it was something about that location. I paid for that location for years before we even opened up. Yeah. And so I was just, it was just like a calling or something. And then during that process, that's why I decided to go the healthier route, so no grease, no salt, we air fry our food, and that was because a lot of the sandwiches that we do there, they're named after our loved ones. And so they pass away for dietary related illnesses. So I decided that I would make that my mission to um, do it without the grease, do it without the salt, And the reason for that is because now I have something that it's like, it's something that makes me get up every day to go fight for that, because I know it's bigger than me.
So tell me what the process was. You found a place,
hmm
and then what's step two?
Step
Like like
two.
like like in terms of like putting together like a menu, putting together, you had to build a restaurant, like, and so how do you go about doing that, getting the licensing and all that? I'm sure it's not an easy process in Los Angeles, and you're in California of all places. So
Oh no, no, not at all. And during that time period, the building and safety in the city of Inglewood, the plan checker, he was sick. So I had to go through all these steps that I've done all the time as a contractor. And then I would go back to my clients and be like, okay, we're going through this, but now it's my money involved, And my first restaurant that I did was my own, so I knew the process from other projects, but now it's not just the city. Now I have to also go through the health department. So that's just a whole another ball game. So long story short, it was so many different things, but the process was just to stick to the plan. And the plan was I wrote a immaculate business plan. And the plan, even though there was certain things you couldn't plan for, we always created contingency. So the process started off where we had the first obstacle, plan checking, and then the plan checker was sick, and then they had us to do what they call grandfathering the front end, because you have to, if you go and do a remodel on a project, you have to bring it up to code, which I understand from a contractor standpoint. But when you don't budget for that from the customer standpoint, which I'm the contractor and the customer, it could be a large undertaking. So long story short, what I wind up doing was just taking it piece by piece, breaking it down, going to meeting with the people to get some kind of understanding so we can get the ball rolling on the process. So what is the alternative if the plan checker can't get this project pushed through? What are our other alternatives to get this thing going. So just work through that process. The health department, that's a whole nother ball game, because now you have to go and make sure that you accomplish everything on their list too, which you just finished the list with the city. So if I was to talk to somebody who wanted to go through this process, I would definitely recommend them to have somebody like a consultant, a restaurant consultant, which I had at the time of our first restaurant, but there were still things that was outside of his expertise. So I would say that you want to have a contractor and a restaurant consultant that works together, is what I learned during that process. So once we opened up the first one, the second one, we had it all figured out.
So when I go into those sandwich shops, it's not as easy as it appears. You walk in, you automatically you're thinking, hey, you know, this is, it looks like it's perfectly done in here. It's pretty complicated to get this up and running. Is all the paperwork the most difficult part of it, or is you're trying to manage everything at the same time?
It's more the timelines, because you have to get into, it's the first in, first out type of approach. So it's the waiting processes, but there's timers going on here. There's materials being dropped off here. You have to work with the landlords on this particular aspect of it. So it really is a team effort, you know, and it's just life. I think, you know, you just have to work at it, and you stay focused on it, because like you said, you come into it after it's built, you thinking that it was just, you know, a day in, day out type of approach to it, but it's so many different challenges. On the second one, I wind up having a head-on car crash. The day I passed the health department's background, I'm coming to USC, and car came from southbound, and I was heading northbound, crossed the median, hit me head on, you know? And so it's just one of those things that trust the process, I would like to say, you know?
So, Willie, were you the only one doing everything yourself?
No, I hired a team of guys who work for me on both projects. You know, so my plumbers, my electricians, my handyman. So I do have a team, but you know, when it comes to being the boss, you work heavy as the crown. You know, you have to carry all those things, because whatever those missing pieces are that those guys don't cover, you have to be the fill in. So I was always the fill in.
Okay, so you opened up this store in Inglewood. I think you were telling me it's luckily it's near the football stadium. So
Yes.
so how close is it to the football stadium, and when did you open up your first restaurant?
I opened up my first restaurant in 2018. It was April of 2018. We just celebrated 5 years at that location. And we are 2 miles away from the stadium. So we even are what you call a Rams house. We're a certified Rams house. So when the Rams won their NFC West championship, we got to cater to the Rams. So I always give a shout out to the Rams, because they're the ones who I think build the momentum, and they helped us understand what it is to do catering on that scale, and giving us the opportunity. That's how we were able to open up the door to have the audacity to say that we could come to USC as well.
So here's a question I got for you. How did you put together? You have a pretty extensive menu. How do you choose the right food? And you make some amazing sandwiches, and you've got great reviews.
Thank you.
How did you decide to make how did you want to, I guess, the process of making a unique sandwich? How did you do that? What's the process that you put? And I know, and you've got some other stuff there too I want to talk about. What made you decide on putting your menu together the way you did?
We started off with the people who work for me. As a man by the name of Darnell Bean. I met him at a job fair when we were opening up the first location. He has a low sodium seasoning, and that was the thing that he led with when I met him. So my team, you know, I had a chef who was studying at LA Trade Tech, a lady by the name of Sandra. She came in as our chef, and she kind of walked us through the vision, which was, you know, low sodium, no grease. And so we came together as a team. So I gave them the vision, and with the right combination and the right people, I was able to accomplish the first menu. And a lot of it came as a result of trial and error. You know, we did test kitchens, so we really made it a community thing because our menu was even more extensive than what you see now. But when the community came in, they would request certain sandwiches and they would request certain tastes. And we would always give them pushback because we don't serve pork either. We're really diligent in having a low sodium, low fat content menu. So that was the only thing that I was focusing on. But then we also had to get the taste right, you know. So it was one of those things that was a balancing act. And so we were like feeding the community at the very beginning to get feedback. You know, how do you guys like this? What is your, so we got a lot of input. We would do surveys. And so once we had it dialed in, we started naming the sandwiches. And so I started naming them after my loved ones who passed away from, you know, diet related illnesses, you know.
Okay, so now, Willie, you got to give us your most popular sandwich, the name of these sandwiches, and then some of the foods that you, some of I guess your most popular foods. But I want to go over kind of like what the process was in terms of what you decided to put on the menu.
Yeah, so what we decided was I wanted to have signature sandwiches, and the signature sandwiches are named after, like, again, my loved ones who passed away. So our most popular sandwich is called the Lucy May, which is named after my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, and it's an air fried chicken sandwich. And so I played with that sandwich for a little while. We had the low sodium seasoning, so the biggest thing was it started off with the bread. Once I discovered the ciabatta, I knew we had something. So we put that bad boy on the ciabatta, air fried it in our air fryer, and we were off to the races. Our second most popular sandwich would be our lestine, which is a chicken salad. We make a chicken salad that we make in-house with our own seasonings, low sodium, and that's named after my maternal grandmother, which is called the lestine. Our third sandwich is the Big Will, which is I'm a junior, which is named after my father, rest in peace. And that's our barbecue chicken sandwich. It comes on a brioche bun. So we tried to go after the menu from a standpoint to make sure we had those things locked in. And then we went after boar's head meats and cheeses. So that's no GMO, no artificial coloring, no artificial flavoring. Anybody who's into the deli meats and the deli sandwiches, that brand alone, that name brand alone stands on its own. So we kind of did a partnership type of thing where the people who know that name, that's what we created the sandwiches. As long as it fitted the low sodium thing, that's what we went after.
And you got to mention your tuna sandwich.
Oh yeah, my bad. I forgot that. I don't know why I forgot that one because, you know, that's my go-to as well. But that tuna, the backstory on that's from a lady by the name of Sandra, who was the chef who helped to set up our original menu in Inglewood. I love her to death. There was certain things that I do with my tuna that I personally used to do prior to opening up the Sammiche Shoppe. I made my tuna with eggs in it, with relish, with onions. It was just the way I grew up eating tuna, but she came off and she put those dried cranberries in it. And when she did, I'm like, huh? But it's our signature taste, you know, it's what makes us, and it just basically brightens up that tuna, you know. It's just, and then we use albacore tuna, which, you know, is the best tuna to use, and it's my favorite. So I was honored that you took my word for it that first day I met you.
Well, one of the things I like about you, Willie, is that when people come into your shop, I mean, there's a lot of owners that they stay pretty disconnected from their businesses. You're lucky if you ever see an owner ever come into to their own restaurant. But you actually split time between two restaurants, and when people, whether it's students or people at your Inglewood store, when they come in, you make a lot of effort to interact with your customers and introduce yourself and tell them, hey, you know, I'm the owner, and this is what I suggest. And you're always taking input from people how to make your business better. And one of the other things that I really love about you is that you don't just talk about it. When people come in, you're giving them samples. You're like, you know what? When someone says, hey, you know what? I don't know if I want that. I don't know if that's for me. You say, you know what? how about this? And you start giving them samples. It almost reminds me of there was a restaurant I used to go to, and there was a woman. It was her restaurant, and when I come in, she'd give me everything she was cooking there. She would give me some of it, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things that you did too, is that you have a lot of side dishes as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever been in there where somebody comes in and you didn't. If you were there, you say, "Hey, have you tried this?" or "You've tried this."
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the side dishes that you have? And I know you have some specialty side dishes as well.
Oh yeah, man. We do this new mac and cheese that one of the girls, Destiny, who works for me, she just came out with a low sodium, lactose free mac and cheese that's incredible, man. And so we're revamping the menu as we go along, and we're about to feature that as well. We do our air fried sweet potato fries. We do our turkey chili. We do a tomato biz soup that's lactose free as well. And that's the things that we really pride ourselves in, that we giving you that taste on the main dishes, the entrees, and also our side dishes. So the mac and cheese, I'm bragging about that because it's just, to me, to be able to get good tasting food without all the stuff that's not really the best for us is what I pride myself into, you know.
Willie, what are the biggest challenges to opening a restaurant? And we talked about a little bit earlier, but you have two different locations, and I remember you were telling me, and we didn't do a deep dive on it, but you said to me, it's one thing. I got the Inglewood location down.
Mm-hmm.
What was your challenge? You're one of the few minority owned businesses at USC.
Mm-hmm.
What were the challenges moving to that campus and opening up a restaurant?
Yeah, the personal one was for me. I just literally had that accident, and it was a challenge to. I couldn't even walk at one point. You know, I got up and but I couldn't stop. You know, so thank God for the therapy. Thank God for the chiropractors. Thank God I even had to have surgery on my back. So that was a personal challenge. But even the day to day grind, I thought, oh, I work construction. It's going to be easy, but food is a very heavy lifting business, you know. At the USC location, your staff, you know, my team, you know, I'm only as good as my team. So there was a challenge to get the right personnel in there. You know, we went through a whole new shift from the people who started us off with, who we started off with, to who we have today. So I'm very humble based off of that, because I couldn't go, but I had people who were willing to go for me, you know. And then also understanding a new demographic. So when you write a business plan, you have contingencies, you have things that you forecast. It's like Mike Tyson said, you know, you can always plan for a fight, but you don't know what to do until you get hit in the mouth. And so I think for me, the challenge was to get hit in the mouth and to keep swinging, you know, because I had a notion that this is what would work and this is the direction we had to go. But the biggest challenge was to be able to check myself and to go back to how I started back in Inglewood, to get input, you know, people like yourself, customers who come in and give me their opinion, you know, give me little tidbits, let me know what the culture is on the campus, you know, so the learning curve, you know, so it's just, I think remaining humble, you know, and keep swinging, you know, so the challenges, they're going to be there. I had to just basically reference it to what I already known at the Inglewood location and how did I overcome that. So it was a lot of memory that I had to tap into, you know, to figure it out. You know, I figured out this location, so I'm going to figure this one out too. So, and it's a total different demographic. You know, we could go from anywhere from 25 to 70 at our Inglewood location. And at the USC location is mainly students, you know. So, and then from different ethnicities, different cultures, you know. So the cool thing about what we offer with a sandwich though is universal, you know. And so we had to be able to present what we offer to these different demographics and these different backgrounds. And the biggest thing was just to believe and trust in the process, you know.
I always think about when I have a conversation with you about resilience and grit because you never give up, no matter what. There were times you're like, I'm opening this business, Figaro. And I have to say, I have to believe that one of the most difficult challenges, and I think we brought this up, is getting business in, especially after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult was it for you to get through that COVID time? Because we know the impact on restaurants that COVID had, and you were working on opening the USC location transition when people were transitioning out of COVID, the lockdown. What were those challenges like for you?
It was tough. So even when I told you that process earlier, when we were talking about going through the city, going through the health department, a lot of the people retired from the health department after COVID, so you also have people who might not be as experienced, in doing their job. So that became even more of a roadblock because now there's more time put onto a process that already was lengthy. And then there's other things that you had to hit on your schedule. So it was tough. And, phone calls and businesses that you did business with prior to COVID, some of them were shut down. So I had a process that I'm like, okay, I just need to call Paul or call Tony, and Tony and Paul are not there no more. Their businesses are gone because of COVID. So the last number when I was really stressed out from the first location, how do you focus on keeping a business open when you see so many of them around falling or closing? And I think the last number where I was worried about that was it was 48,000 restaurants that closed during COVID. That number was just pretty early on too. So I never gave it any more mind. So I just basically went through the process. But long story short, that wind up being something that I didn't even anticipate. I'm thinking everything opened up and it's just going to be back to normal. But it was so much time added on to already a lengthy process. So I just basically kept chipping away. And it would be, if you got 5 minutes to do something, we would try to focus in on that 5 minutes and know that tomorrow we had to allow another 5 minutes to get to it again, because we probably wouldn't get the full thing finished the previous day. So it was just basically, like you said, being resilient,
How'd you name it the Sammiche Shoppe? I don't think when I say this, I think people are going to probably look up Sammiche Shoppe. It's yeah. So you're going to have to go and explain, how did you spell this out and why did you choose it?
So it's called the Sammiche Shoppe. So our signature sandwich, the Lucy made, my grandmother from Picayune, Mississippi, rest in peace. She would call a sandwich a sandwich. And that's a Southern slang for a sandwich. A lot of people in the Midwest, they use that same terminology, but it's like a slang typically from a Southern roots. But depending on the cool factor, people, they call a sandwich a sandwich. So it just is paying homage to my grandmother. And then I say shop because it's the SHOPPE as opposed to just shop, SHOP, because I'm born and raised in Cali. So I'm giving it the Southern roots is where I come from and the origin of the concept. But then I'm also paying homage to where I grew up at it, which is in Los Angeles. So to give the shop the presence of mind that we do offer Southern flavors, but we also do it with your health in mind, is what we say with our tagline.
So, Willie, I'm going to ask you this, it's a big question, especially nowadays when people talk about starting a business in California. Are you happy you started a business, and does this business fulfill you?
Yes, I am, because the cause, the thing that we built is bigger than me, and there was purpose behind what I did. So I think it had to start off in Inglewood because it's like full circle for me. As a baby, I lived in Inglewood, and I drowned in the city of Inglewood in a pool accident. So it was like it just felt like I was coming home to really figure out what does this community need. And so it had to be where I started off at. I believe that we can be a national chain. I think we could be an international chain. I think that this thing could be as big as God allows me to take it. But the reason why I don't mind it being started in California, and it's a challenge, but it's kind of like that song by Blue Eyes, New York, New York. You know, you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. You know, I think it's a hard sell to open up a business in California because all the taxes and all the overhead. But I think if you start off in a deeper end of the pool, it should be easier when you're swimming in other waters, you know. So I guess I'm a masochist. I think I like pain, but at the same token, I just believe in trusting the process. So if I was talking to somebody starting, just basically just don't be denied. You know, if you have something that you've created and you believe in it, I just think that those roadblocks, they're there, but they're there for. I always tell my staff, we don't take losses, we take lessons. You know, so if it's there, it could be overcame. You know, just like you were telling me, you're a triathlon runner. You know, I think that having that discipline, being in the marathon running segment, you just have to keep going. You know.
And the other question I guess I have for you is, somehow I don't even know how you had time for this, but with all the things that you do, um, how did you get into the marathon world? And then you're a snowboarder. So how did you get into that?
I was at my restaurant one day, and there's a guy by the name of Barack O'Butter. That's his screen name. He's a good friend of mine. His name is Butter. He has a running club called Keep It Run 100. And one day I'm at the Inglewood location. I just see people walk by, run by, and I'm just like, what's going on? So I go outside being nosy or whatever. And it's just this community of people who are just in a running club. And I had just had my physical, and some of my results wasn't the best. And the doctor said that you might want to start, you know, doing some more physical activities, you know. And so I'm like, well, let me give it a try. Some of my buddies was a part of the club. So I joined the running club. So we would go out every Thursday, run 3 miles or so. And it just like that became like my therapy. You know, I was able to do that. Then the 3 miles turned into 5, 5 turned into 10. And I saw the LA Marathon announcement come up, and I said, oh, do I want to try it? It was going to be for free through the club, but I got into like I procrastinated. So what I wind up doing was I signed up myself with my own money. And the first one was the half marathon for Pasadena. So I ran the half marathon for Pasadena as training during that, and then I ran the LA marathon shortly thereafter in November. And so I was hooked after that, you know. And then the snowboarding, a friend of mine, he introduced me to it when I was about 35 or so, and I just fell in love with it. It seemed like it was just fate, you know.
How often do you go snowboarding?
Typically per season, at least 4 times. I'm very busy, but I didn't get to go at all this last season. But I'm gonna definitely double up that effort this upcoming season. But typically about a good 4 runs. I've learned about I believe it's called, I forget what it's called. It's called Lewis, I believe. It's a snow it's about 45 minutes outside the Las Vegas Strip. So I like to go to Vegas too. So try to kill 2 birds when I'm out there.
So, Willie, I always ask some fun questions at the end. I know you listen to the podcast sometimes, so
Mhm.
and what is your favorite guilty pleasure food wise? Because I know you're the food connoisseur.
I'm a sushi guy, man. I love my salmon, my baked Alaskan. It's a salmon roll, man. That's my favorite go-to, you know. But I also love Mexican food, you know, being in LA, a good Mexican spot, it definitely hit the spot.
What was the older self, advice wise, give the younger version of Willie?
Um, hmm. believe in yourself. Um, you have it. You're more than enough. You have it based off of this circle. You always want to create your tribe. So trust in yourself that you have the right people around you. So believing in yourself is where I would definitely say is the most important thing. But also developing your tribe, is the most important two things I think that I had to develop over the years. But I would have told myself 20, 30 years ago to focus in on that. That's key.
If you could meet one person, and it could be any time in the history of the world, who would it be, and what would you say?
Muhammad Ali. He's my hero. And I always ask that as an interview question to some of my people who I hire over the years. And the reason for that is because no matter what, we're here having an earthly experience, and we're all human beings. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna have some triumphs, but that perseverance, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I think he embodies that. So that's why I chose that name.
If you could be one superhero, who would it be and why?
That's a good question. Superman, because I love the fact that he's selfless in both states, being Clark Kent, for the day job, but he's still in character. He's still true to who he is in both of those settings, and to be selfless, I think is a good trait, So I would say Superman for those purposes.
Best part about being a dad?
Wow. That's the best thing. I feel I'm accomplished. I've had an amazing run. I hope that there's more to this story, and I'm gonna bust my butt to make sure that it comes into fruition. But that's my pride, man. It's like to see those guys when they were first born, and then the men that they've become, they it's amazing that you were the teacher, and now I have all adult children now, and they teach me some things, So that's my pride. So it's just I could talk about that the whole podcast. You can have me back, Fig, but
And,
it's just pride,
and and what do you want to be remembered for when you're no longer on living?
I believe I went to the King Tut exhibit, right? And my father has been gone for 27 years. I would like to have his legacy. I would like to make sure that I continue on pushing his legacy. And the reason being because at the King Tut exhibit, they talked about the Ka and the Ba. The Ka is the spiritual force that you have within you. That's who makes you Fig, And then the Ba is the same spiritual force, but then after you pass on, And the reason for that and what makes that important because you want to live a life that your name is still being said because after you die, they say you die twice. You die the physical, and then you die the second time when the last person says your name. So I want to live a life that my name lives on, and it might not just necessarily be Willie Jenkins, but it's something that Willie Jenkins did. And I've had that example where my father, who's been gone for 27 years, and my youngest son talking to like one of his cousins or his little sisters and telling them that a story or an example on how to live life, a moral or ethical thing. And it was based off of something that his grandfather taught me. And he never even met his grandfather. So it's just those things. So that's what I fight for,
Well, you've been an amazing guest. This is I every time I have a podcast, I learn so much from my guests. That's one of the reasons I love the podcast. So I just want to thank you so much for being here today. If they want to come by your restaurant, what's the best way? Can you spell out the sandwich name for me?
Sammiche, the
Yes, yeah,
Sammiche.
yes. Can
So
you
it's,
please can you
I'm
spell
sorry.
out and then if you can give your contact information, the location of your stores, your website, and all the other good stuff.
Yeah, so it's called the Sammiche Shoppe. That's THE, the Sammiche, SAMMICHE, Shop, SHOPPE. We're located in 2 locations. We're at 222 East Region in the city of Inglewood. We're also at USC Village. That's 3201 South Hoover Street. We're Suite 1845. We're nestled in right between Cava and El Gardena in the USC Village. You can also reach us on all the social media platforms as the Sammiche Shoppe, spelled out like I spelled it out earlier. And if you have to get in contact us with via phone, our Inglewood location is 424-331-5378. And our USC location is 213-538-5411.
Thank you so much, Willie. And you've been such a great guest. I really appreciate how humble you are, and your work ethic, and you have such good energy, and you work so hard in your life. I mean, when I meet you, we've had a lot of conversations, and
Yes,
you're just a very driven, good person. So, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, listeners, for listening to the podcast. We'll have another great guest like Willie on next time. Thank you so much for being here, Willie. Till next time, keep learning, everybody. Take care.
thank you.